Hey, what's going on everyone? In this video, I'm going to be showing you in Wwise how to set up some states and transitions for your music and then implement that into Unreal. All right, let's get started. So the first thing you want to do in Wwise is go to your Layouts tab and you want to go to your Interactive Music. I've got some assets here already. This is from a previous project and I'm going to be using it to just sort of demo it to you, but I'll also show you how to add stuff in too. The first thing you want to do is go to Game Syncs. So this is just the tab in your Project Explorer, and under States right over here, you're going to want to right click on your default work unit and you can go to New Child and click Add a New State Group. You can call this whatever you want. I'm not going to necessarily add it in because I've got something here. But then once you have your state group, you can right click again, or you can actually click up here, by the way, too. And then you add New Child and just State. Now, the best thing you can do to get the most out of the video, or if you're sort of doing this, for an actual project, create an ambient, like an explore or an ambient track, and then a combat track, and potentially a death and a victory sort of thing, something like that. So once you've created this stuff, you're going to want to go over to your audio tab. So you're going to go to Interactive Music Hierarchy here, right click, New Child, and we're going to go to Music Switch Container. And then so you can just call this, music. The next thing we're also going to do is we're going to start to import some of our music. Now we're going to need to put our music into playlist containers, but we're going to first just sort of bring in the music. Okay, so I brought in both of them and we are just going to import that. So now we're going to open it up. The first thing you want to do is set up your tempo for your tracks. This one, I believe it was like 83 or something like that. There we go. The other thing you want to do is you can hold Control. It even says there too. And just move that to the start location. If you hold Shift and Control at the same time, you can sort of scroll out a bit. You also want to set out point, so that's good there too. And then we'll go over to this one, and we will set this as well, I believe. All right, so once that's set, now we got to put these guys into playlist containers. What you can do is we can just sort of right-click, New Child, Music Playlist Containers. For this one, we're just going to call this Ambient, and we're going to make another one, New Child, Music Playlist, and then we'll call this just Combat. So I'm just going to do it for two of them. I'm not going to do it for all of them because I have some other ones here too. I'll just show you like Stop, but you'll get the idea with the transitions for this one, and then I'll show you what I did for the other ones. So with Ambient, I'm just going to click on this one and drag it into there like that, and this one into there like that. So once I've got the playlist container, the important thing here, in order to get this track to loop, we're just going to click on this track and we're going to put it into our sequence continuous. I'm not going to go over all of these different things. That's going to be covered in another video. But the simple thing you want to go do is just click over here and just click infinite. And that's going to make sure that it loops infinitely. And we're going to do the exact same thing for this track here. All right, so the next thing you want to do is you want to go to your music switch container. And you're going to want this little arrow. You're going to click on this, and you're going to go to State Groups. You're going to click on the one that you just created. So for me, under my Game Syncs tab, that would be Music. And then it's going to give me a list of all the things, all the states that I set up beforehand. The thing you need to do next is go to your track. It's important that you click on the playlist container, so that the thing that looks like a Jenga, instead of the actual music segment, or like this. You want to make sure that you're clicking on this. Whenever you have a state here, you want to tell Wwise that you want the track to play. So all you got to do is just drag the playlist container onto the ambient track. Now you can go and create more advanced systems too as well, with many different types of switches or states as well, and combine them. But that's going to be a little bit out of the scope for this video, and I'm just going to try to show you this stuff as quick as possible. All right, so you can see here it shows up in the bottom hand here, and whenever I'm on the ambient state, the music, this playlist container is going to play. And I'm going to do the same thing for the combat state. Just click and drag over it, and it's just going to pop up right here. I'm just going to quickly show you. With this, I did all the other ones in here too as well. The next thing we want to go do is sort of set up these transitions. Hey, what's up? If you're looking to just learn about states and setting them up with Unreal, I recommend skipping to this part in the video because I'm about to talk about transitions and it might take a while. All right, see ya. All right, now by default, there is the any to any transition, and this is all going to be in the transitions tab. Any basically to any it's just sort of a nice default that they set up for you, but in order to get some good sounding transitions, you're gonna need to modify them a little bit. And so what I'm gonna do is explain this whole tab in here as best as I can so that you know your options. I'm not gonna go into this one, mainly because, again, this is gonna cover the stuff with the playlist containers, the stuff and how this stuff works too as well. So I'm not going to cover that, but I will go over all of the different transitions, and I'll show you how to set it up. So the first thing you need to do to create a new transition is come over here to the right where it says add transition. You're going to click on that, and now we're going to get a new one. Now you want to drag your playlist container. I'm going to drag that here. And then the other for me is going to be a combat. And so now I'm going to designate whenever my ambient track goes to my combat track, this is how I want it to sound. In here, we've got a couple of different options. So the exit source is basically whenever Wwise is given the command by Unreal to switch, this is basically going to determine how the ambient track is going to exit. Okay, so the first one is immediate, so that's just going to switch immediately. So in my game, whenever you're like walking around the game and you shoot a robot, I don't want it to take too long to do that. So this is why I would normally set it for immediate, but I'll show you some of the other important ones to use. I don't really use next grid a lot, but next bar, next beat, next cue, next custom cue, and exit cue are quite useful. With next bar, it's kind of as it says. Next beat, same thing. Next cue and next custom cue, they're a little bit different. With next cue, in our track here, let's show you. So if we go over to the music segment over here and we right click somewhere, I can do what's called add a custom cue, and I can add as many of these as I want. You can also select a color for them, and you can also give them a name, like, I don't know, 1. And so what this first one does here, this first transition, when it says next cue, it will transition to either the exit cue or it will go at any custom cue. So basically, as it's playing along, it doesn't matter if it's like, for example, right here, as soon as the transition happens, it's going to wait till the next cue. And then as soon as it hits this point, then it's going to do the transition. Or even at the end, it's going to do the transition at the end if it gets to that point. The only difference between this one and the next custom cue is the next custom cue is only just going to use custom cues that you put in. So technically, the exit cue over here is not considered a custom cue. The other cool thing you can do is you can match it. For example, I named one of them, and it will do that transition there. The next thing you can sort of do is an exit cue. Exit cue is basically the same thing as I was saying for that red line, and it'll go transition right there. Next thing you can sort of think about with this one here, sync to, we've got the entry cue, so that's just going to be right here, this green sort of line. All right, so the next one's going to be same time as playing segment, and so whenever I play my first track and it transitions to the next one, the other track is going to play somewhere relative to the other track, preferably at the same BPM, so maybe 120, or maybe even half time, so 60 BPM and 120. The next one is random cue. This sort of functions the same way as the other cues, but it's for the other track, so that's going to be the combat track. So the way it works is I can set up any cue in my combat track, again, just sort of right clicking and doing that, and it will go between any of these cues that I have here or the entry cue. The second last one is the random custom cue. That again is just going to be excluding the entry cue, but then all of the custom cues. Again, you can also put in the name of the cue that you want to specifically go to as well. And then the last one here is at the last exit position. This is useful if I actually do use this in my game. For the combat track going back to the ambient track. You can think of it like if the track was playing maybe 30 seconds and then it transitioned to, the other track. When the other track comes back to the same one, or another track comes back to the same one, it's going to play at the last place that it exited. And that's going to sort of continue as it goes along. So that's pretty much it for the sync to and the exit source. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is explain to you how the fade out and fade in systems work. To do that, I'm just going to set, again, this to immediate and this one to entry cue. And I'm also going to take off play pre-entry and play post-exit's okay. And actually, I'm just going to take this off for a second. All right, so I've got my tracks here. So I'm going to go over to my transport tab. I'm just going to play the ambient music. Now, while the ambient music is playing, my transitions should be set. So it's just going to be immediate. It's going to be very abrupt. It's not going to sound very good. So it's going to be very, very quick. And in fact, this one's a little bit loud. I'm just going to turn this one down. So, yeah, so the transition is just immediate. Now you can think of that in your DAW as, you know, just the end of one track sticking to the other one. No fades or anything like that. That's what this setup right here is going to represent. Now, this play pre-entry, this is for the combat track or the second destination track. Now, the pre-entry is sort of defined as the area right before the entry cue or wherever, you know, you're sort of coming in. It can, again, you could be setting it as a random point with cues or next bar, beat, whatever, but that's just the part before the sync point. And I can define that simply by going into here and I can say, okay, well, I want to decide how much fade in I want for my pre-entry. And what we can do is set the time. We can say maybe let's just do 1 second. We can set it so that we've got the pre-entry here. This is the sync point in the middle. So that's the point where the two pieces of audio are being connected. If you think about it, this is the combat track right at the start here. And at the source, this is the ambient track right here. The post exit is everything after this track sort of makes the sync. So if you've got a reverb tail that's, you know, doing the transition maybe after an exit cue, that's what's going to play after here. And it just allows you to do a crossfade. Again, the pre-entry is everything that's before that sync point. Again, it doesn't necessarily need to be the entry cue. It can be a random cue anywhere. And so what this is actually meaning is that at the sync, it's going to do a fade in. And then with this one, I can set the fade out. And by default, you can set it something like this. And so what's actually happening is you are connecting the two pieces of audio together. You know, like this is the one audio connected to this one, but now you've got this sort of V fade on it. You've got the thing fades down, and then in this track, it sort of fades up. And so you'll hear that. It won't sound the best, especially for this, but it's just to give you an idea of what this sounds like. So you're gonna hear 1 second fade coming down, and then 1 second fade coming up. That would be good for a specific situation. Definitely not this situation, but you can use it for a specific situation. So for this scenario, a crossfade makes the most sense. So generally when we do a crossfade, you can sort of type in half the value you want. That's an easy way to do the offset. And so now you can think, you know, at the sync point, some of the audio from the source is going to start to fade down right before, and then on this other one, we can do the same thing, minus 0.5. And then some of the audio as the other part's going down is fading up. So it's all happening at the same time. Now, one important thing to sort of take note of is that if we're having this to be immediate, the actual transition time is going to be 0.5 seconds. So just to bring this to attention, so you've got your source here. So as soon as you know, there's a Wwise is being told, okay, I want you to make this transition from an ambient to a combat state immediately, which is determined here, it's going to say, okay, sure, I'm going to do that, but you've also told me to do a 1 second time for a fade out. You can see it kind of go down here. So it's going to wait 0.5 seconds. This is half of this 1 second value. It's going to wait 0.5 seconds to even bring in the other track. So in an exaggerated sense, if you did something like 2, so now if I actually put it like this, it's going to wait 2 seconds after I click ambient to combat. And that's also going to be the same thing for next bar and next beat. Now, you might run into this situation where if you're on beat 3 of a 4-bar, you know, sort of thing, you might run into the issue where Wwise waits another bar to do this transition. Sometimes it works depending on how much time you have set, but you have to be aware that if you set longer times, it will not necessarily do the transition at your preferred time. So you need to go in there and tweak it a little bit, but it's just a word of caution. So it's always going to be delayed a little bit if you, for example, set it to immediate. It won't necessarily do that with next beat, but you can run into this situation again. If you're on beat 3, there's no 2 seconds in the rest of the bar to allow Wwise to have that transition. So it's going to wait for the next bar, and then it's going to do that same transition. And with next beat, it's the same sort of thing. You know, if there's not enough time you set it too long, it's not going to have enough time to do that transition. So just keep that stuff in mind. The last thing I do want to talk about is the transition segment. This sort of works the same way as we've been talking about with the fade out and all these things. It's really easy to use. All you got to do, just select it, and then you can find whatever audio you brought in. Of course, you label it transition and stuff. But yeah, this fade out will then just apply to here. And then this fade in is essentially the same thing in here. And then this fade out, is essentially what's going to be right here going to this track, in the same way. So hopefully that makes sense. We're not going to be using this, of course. Yeah, so for my track, I'm just going to show you some of the things that I did so you can get an idea, for what to do on your own. Yeah, so here for my ambient to combat track, I believe I set it to, whatever these numbers are. Yeah, and I set it to immediate, start of playlist, and entry queue. And let's just take a quick listen to let's see what that sounds. Put the ambient track, and transition could be better. I think I was playing around with it a little bit before, but yeah, so that's just transition there. Now with the combat to the ambient, generally in my game, I wanted it to be a little bit slower. So after, a couple of seconds, you set a delay, of course. I did that in Unreal. You can do it in here, but I chose to do that in Unreal where I had a delay. After, I think it was like 8 or 10 seconds, then, this Wwise would be told to switch. And in here, I've got it set to next bar. And there's a pretty long fade and a pretty long fade in as well. What I also set was last exit position. And if you remember before, that's basically where if I've had the ambient track, which is what it's transitioning to. If I've had the ambient track playing a little bit, maybe 20 seconds in, and I go to the combat track, and now when I go to the combat track back to the ambient track, it's gonna start 20 to 30 seconds in to the ambient track. Maybe I can just show you what that sounds like real quick. And then go back to the ambient. And then it just sort of fades in. And then I've got other transitions from the ambient to death, combat to death, maybe just quickly, combat, and then just supposed to be like a robot, you're dying. And then I've set other things for victory and also to stop the music too as well. But yeah, the next thing you sort of need to go do is go to your events. All you have to do is to new child, you can go add a new event and you can name your new event play music or music, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, so, and then all you got to do is, so you click on your event, go to audio, and then you just drag your music switch container into there. And by default, it'll set it to play, so you're pretty much all good. The last thing you need to do is go to your Soundbanks, this one actually up here. And then we want to basically add a new sound bank if you haven't. Like, of course, I've created some already, but you can just click up here to go new. Give whatever name, you call it new. So I'm just going to click this, and this won't be selected by default. You can click new, whatever the thing is called, Windows and English. And then I will find my track, which is play music. Put that in here like so. And then I will hit generate. And it'll generate all the tracks. It's gonna have some errors here, but that's just because I had a duplicate bunch of tracks. And then you're gonna go project and project save. And that's pretty much it for Wwise for the time being. Okay, so next thing is to open up Unreal. Woo! Oh man, it's getting intense. Can you feel it? I can certainly feel it. Okay, so we're here in shit. Okay, so here we are in Unreal. I'm not going to show you how to integrate it with Unreal, but if you need to figure that stuff out, you can check out one of my other videos that I've done on how to integrate all of the stuff, and then just come back to this video. Yeah, so if you're basically integrated, all that we got to do is go over to our Audio Kinetic tab here, and then go to Audio Kinetic Bank. This is going to be the same one that we created, new, and then next thing we're going to do is going to go over to Window, and Wwise Picker, and this is reflective of your events. And so for me, it was just play music, and then I'm just going to double click on it and set it to my bank that I have. So the new one, I guess, the new one that we created. The last thing you got to do is just go over to here, build in this little drop down arrow, and hit generate sound data, and cross your fingers, and then it works. Sweet. All right, and then it'll say import to. It might not show on my screen. Apologies, because I'm in the way. And so yeah, once it's done, it's gonna do its thing. And now all we gotta do is just drag it in. Like so. The way we can think about it is in the beginning of the game, I just want some music to start. So it technically can be in the menu. I was lazy with this game. I didn't make some menu music, but you could do the same thing with the menu. You know, as the menu starts, you have the music. So you have a menu state or something like that, and then it goes into gameplay state or something like that. You know, you can set this however you want. So we just dragged it in, real simple. And then we're just gonna go over to here. Actually, because we want this to be 2D, we can just set this occlusion refresh. You can set that to 0. And the next thing you want to go do is click on Blueprint Add Script and hit select. Oh, by the way, the reason why I selected occlusion refresh interval to 0, in case you don't know, is that if I do have the occlusion refresh interval on, Unreal's engine's occlusion system is going to be built in. And so if I'm behind something, the sound will be blocked as if it was like the sound was like diegetic, like it was in the game. We want it to be 2D. We don't want the sound to be affected by wherever we are on the map. So we want to take that off. So that's the reason why. Okay. So now we go into our play music blueprint, and then we go over to event graph, right? And then so just drag off event begin play, and then we're gonna go set state. Here we go. We're gonna hit this little drop down guy, and under state group, I want to just quickly show you. So the state group is going to be this one that you set. So if you set it to music, whatever one you set it to, it's going to be this one here. Oh my. Okay. And type it in, and it will be music. Make sure you get the spelling absolutely correct, because it will not work if you spell it incorrectly. The next one is, of course, the state. That is, you know, whatever one you have here. Again, be mindful of the spelling. If you want, you could copy it or something. Yeah. And the next thing you want to do, drag off of that, and then you want to just hit post event. And now this is actually going to be playing the event that you set earlier. We're just going to drag off actor, and we're going to type in self, and then on AK event, we're going to go into it, and then we are going to set it to our actual event that's play music. Now, I've got two because I created, you know, two for each one, but I believe it should be this one. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. We'll see. And then so we'll start it, and so then we've got our music playing. Awesome. So yeah, so right away as the game started, the game state was set. So we told Wwise, okay, in the state group, we want you to be playing the ambient music, and then we said, okay, we'll just play the event now. And now, anytime we want to switch our state, it's really, really simple. Well, let's say it's simple in terms of the code that you have to put in, the blueprints that you have to put in. Where you put it in is dependent on how your game functions and works. So once you've set your initial state in Wwise, it's pretty simple to get it to trigger after that. Most of the times you really just need to have the set state sort of function that we did in the blueprints earlier and put that in the appropriate spot. So for my game, what we did was that we actually set the states, as you can see right here. This is the state, so the music and combat, as well as the state for it to go back from the combat to ambient. We put that in the enemy's damage code. And so essentially the idea was that, you know, as soon as we shoot an enemy, we want the music to play immediately. That's what I showed you in Wwise. And then we basically want it to slowly fade out afterwards if you're not shooting any enemies. And that was the concept. And so the way it generally works in here, without getting too deep in it, you know, we've basically got this function that's checking to see if the enemy is taking any damage. And there's a conditional statement that basically says, okay, is this enemy dead? Or is this actor, I guess, dead? And if it's true, then what's going to happen is it's going to spawn an explosion, and the actor is going to be destroyed. And the actor is going to be destroyed, of course, in that, the explosion is going to be taking place in the location that the enemy was. If the condition is not met, so the enemy is not dead, then nothing's going to happen. And the cool thing you've got here is this sequence. And so it's going to sort of do this one and then the next one. So it's sort of in a sequence. And so it's going to do this one. So say, for example, I shoot a bot, and, you know, doesn't die. It's going to go through here. It's going to go into this conditional statement. And it's going to say, oh, well, is it dead or not? And it's going to return false or true. So if I shoot it and it's not dead, then it's going to go and do this next sequence. If I shoot it and it is dead, well, then it's just going to spawn an explosion, but then also go to the sequence. Okay, and so then after that, we've got a Boolean here that is setting the default state to on. So if you shoot the enemy, the battle state is immediately going to go on. And then that's where we're going to basically trigger the music. So the state, all we need to do is literally just input this one thing. Right after that, we've got a retriggerable delay. And so the way this works is that when the enemy is shot, this, all this whole stuff is going to happen, right? It's going to set the state. And then it's going to go to this retriggerable delay. And what this does is it starts off sort of a timer or a delay. And it's just going to go from 12 to 0. We set it here. And the idea with the retriggerable part is that if, for example, I shoot the enemy again, then technically I would still be kind of like fighting enemies. And so we don't want the music to go away. So if it goes down, like to 3, it will go back up to 12 and it'll keep doing that so long as I keep shooting enemies. Anyways, so it continues on. It then sets the variable with this is the battle state on. It sets it to false, so it's not on, and now you're basically not in a battle state. And so at that point, we're going to then set the state to ambient, and you can see that we put the state group here and then the ambient here. So hopefully that's not too complicated. But this just gives you a general idea of, sort of what I did. Again, this is not sort of me knowing, of course, everything here, but it's partly understanding what you want to get out of your system and being able to communicate that and work with your programmers and developers. To sort of show it off, I guess, I will just show you the system a little bit in action. So I'll just start it and I'll just play a tiny bit of the game and you'll hear the music fade in after I shoot an enemy, and then I'll just kind of not shoot the enemy, and then you'll see the music fade out. All right, here we go. I got myself out of the way. It's pretty cool with this game, so these little robots will they basically get rid of the floor. Is this the kind of idea? See, this is one of the robots. We have 2 robots. Although, there's some things that always need to be fixed with games. But anyways, so let's just shoot one of these robots. Here, stay put. Shoot the robot. So now we've got the music. Now we can sort of just wait a little bit. So hopefully you get an idea of what that's sort of sounding like, right? Where, I'm still in the combat state and then it went off. These guys are still tearing the floors here. Kind of want to know. But yeah, and then, after a while, it'll sort of fade back in and it'll go back to the same point it was before. So it's a little bit of the game. I hope you sort of found it interesting. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Alright, so that pretty much does it. I hope you found the video useful. I'm going to be putting some more videos relating to music systems in Wwise and implementing it into Unreal in the future, the near future. And yeah, if you found the video helpful, I'd really appreciate a like and consider subscribing because there's going to be more content like this coming out in the future. Alright, that's pretty much it. I hope you all have a great day and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.